How many ways are there to crimp a tube? I bet you think there's only one way, but actually there's two ways, and I'm going to show you. I have a piece of beading wire. It's 49 strand. Let's add a bead. And I always like to put a small bead before my crimp tube, so this is a little silver plated bead. Add the crimp tube, and then we have a lobster clasp we're going to attach. So I just go through the hole of the lobster clasp, bring the wire back through the crimp tube, through the small bead, and at least one or two beads. I only have one on here for this example. And you do want to allow enough room for the lobster clasp or toggle clasp or whatever you're attaching to. If it needs to have some movement, make sure you allow a little wire there for that movement. I have a crimping tool. This happens to be a standard crimping tool. There's different sizes. First, I'm going to show you the most common way. Make sure your wires are side by side and go directly to the center, yes, the center of the crimping tool. This is the most common way. You crimp it, and that separates the wires a little bit. You can see it has a little bend in it. And then you turn it sideways. Whoops, my bead's coming off there, but normally I'd have a whole strand of beads. So let's just move this clip up a little bit to keep that from moving around. You see the little bend, little curl, and then you rotate it on its side and use the front part of the crimping tool, the front part, and give it a crimp. And just check it. Maybe sometimes you have to go more than once, but you give it a tug, and this is good. It's secure. Now let me show you the second way to do a crimp tube. I have another piece of wire, little round beads. I have a little silver plated bead, the crimp tube, and a lobster clasp. Same thing, thread the wire through, bring it back through the crimp tube, and a couple of beads. And again, you want to allow a little bit of room for some movement. So this is what we have so far. Now, you still want the wire to be side by side. You don't want it crossing over itself. So I'm kind of rotating it in my hand so that the wires are side by side. So here's the second way of doing it, or the first way of doing it, depending on what you prefer. This method, instead of going to the center first, you go to the front first. You go to the front of the crimping tool and give that a press, and that just flattens it just a little bit. Then you go to the center of the crimping tool, the center, and that gives it that little bend, and then rotate it on its side and go back to the front again and crimp it. Press it again. And always test it to make sure it doesn't pull apart. And it's good. Either method works just fine, and you have seen both methods in my video. And the reason I started going to the front, then middle, then front, versus what is most common, which is the middle, then the front, of course turning it on its side for that final crimp, is because when I bought a new crimper tool, it showed me on the back, after you thread it through the tube, you crimp at the front, middle, and then back to the front with it on its side. Front, middle, to the front on its side. And so I decided to start trying this method. Either way works just fine. So if you're seeing the first method out there, well, that's fine. If you're seeing the second method out there, that's fine. The most important thing is to make sure that the wire that you've brought back through the crimp tube is side by side with the other one and not crossing over. So either method works fine. So just in case you didn't know it, now you know. There's two ways of crimping a crimp tube. And if you don't have a crimping tool, I have a link below this video for something very similar to this. And there are three sizes. This one is bead-along, and there's three sizes out there. There's a micro petite, a standard, which is what I have, and a mighty grand. I think for most projects, the standard is just fine, and it does say standard on it. Check out my other jewelry making videos. If you like this video, give it a like, comment, and if you haven't done so, please subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'm Vicki with Avante Jewelry, and I'll see you soon.